prosecutions against the Tea Party, he advised all of his clients, do not submit to any interviews from the FBI. Now, last July, when he was testifying, James Cole, he made remarks to Congress saying that
the career people we have at the Department of Justice are really some of the best and most honest lawyers I've ever seen. The amount of integrity that's there is really quite astounding.
And yet, here we have this other group who also has been investigating the Justice Department. They say hundreds of Justice Department attorneys violated professional rules, laws, or ethical standards. Last July, James Cole testified to Congress.
If somebody brought to our attention evidence of a crime, we would of course look into it. But if somebody wanted us to target somebody because of their political beliefs, we would not go down that road.
Well, here's how Congressman George Hansen describes the Justice Department. The kingmakers at the Justice Department play selective politics, but the degree depends upon whether they want to control you, teach you a lesson, terminate your career, or destroy you. That's from the grave of George Hansen. James Cole, you putrid, bloated pile of rotten maggot scum. Thanks for the interview. After looking at that picture of James Cole, I feel an urgent need to get my stomach pumped.
Oh, Mark, we're almost out of time, but I want to bring this up today because most of the people that have heard about Congressman Hansen, the main thing that they're thinking about is the torture that he underwent. And we haven't talked about that yet because that's part of the next thing that they did to him. You know, he fights for 11 years to clear his name, and it looks like, obviously, he's going to be exonerated. He ultimately was by the Supreme Court. But before that happened, just as it was about to happen, they bring another action against him of bank fraud charges. And that judge was far more egregious in his behavior, I believe, than the previous judge who just basically convicted him by keeping information out of the trial that would have exonerated him. This judge comes after him. I would say this is the penalty phase because now, this time, he gets a much longer jail sentence and he is tortured in the process leading up to the trial as well as afterwards. Tell us about that.
Well, that actually took place after the trial when he was convicted before a crooked judge. And this took place in Idaho. Now, when they railroaded Congressman Hansen to prison the first time, he was in prison in the federal facility in Petersburg, Virginia. So after the second kangaroo conviction, which took place in Idaho, then they decided, well, all right, let's get him back out to Petersburg in Virginia. So they did. They took a month doing it.
And during that month, nobody knew where he was. His attorneys didn't know where he was. His wife didn't know where he was. They disappeared him out of the system. And what they did was they used a form of torture that they usually reserve for violent, uncontrollable criminals, basically shackling them in a very tight manner that cuts off circulation to their hands and to their feet.
They did that, and to ensure that that happened, what you just described, they also attached a black box to the chains to keep them tightened. And then they would leave him like that for 12, 14, 18 hours a day.
Wow, that's just amazing. So, you know, when we come forward today and we look at what just was brought to light earlier this week, we see that The Guardian reported that a U.S. judge has ordered the American government to identify what was happening, give an explanation for 2,100 pictures that they have of prisoners who are being tortured in Afghanistan and Iraq. And we have the Obama administration defending what the Bush administration did. Rather, they're not even using it for political advantage, but they're basically saying, you can't see this. Should we be surprised when 35 years ago, our American government persecuted both Republicans and Democrats, persecuted someone who stood up to the system, pointed out the injustices of the IRS, and he got prison and tortured in the process and had his life destroyed.
That is indeed correct. And all of this, so much of it, comes back to James Cole. What was revealed earlier this year by Judicial Watch were emails that showed how back in 2010, 4 years ago, how the Public Integrity Section was colluding with the IRS to try to figure out a way to rig prosecution on Tea Party organizations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting to me to see these public integrity organizations. You know, here in Texas, we have a very high-profile case. It's gone national now because it's resulted in the indictment of Governor Perry because we had the head of the Public Integrity Unit get very, very drunk and in the process get physically and verbally abusive as part of her arrest. That went viral. And after that, the governor said, unless she resigns, I'm not going to give any more money to this so-called Public Integrity Unit. And because of that, now they've indicted him. So, I mean, that's the kind of upside-down society we live in. I mean, I'm sure there's things that, there are things in terms of Gardasil and other things like that that Governor Perry has done that I think people ought to come after him for indictment for, but not for that. So for the very thing that he did that was right, they come after him because this is where the political power is in these so-called public integrity units. That's where they go after the political opponents, isn't it? Saying that they're upholding integrity. It's kind of like the Patriot Act, where they destroy the Constitution saying they're going to protect us from terrorists.
Indeed. Now, Judicial Watch, well, they dragged James Cole to testify before Congress about this collaboration between the Public Integrity Section and the IRS. And
this is as part of today's, IRS prosecutions against the harassment against the Tea Party. Go ahead.
Yes, indeed. When Cole was testifying, he claimed that Justice Department attorneys from the Public Integrity Section, they were reaching out to the IRS in an attempt to educate themselves on the ramifications of changes in campaign finance laws. Well, last May, the Oversight Committee interviewed two lawyers from the Public Integrity Section, Richard Pilger and Jack Smith. During his interview, Richard Pilger refused to answer 34 questions submitted to him. Jack Smith, who's the current chief of the Public Integrity Section, he also refused to answer critical questions. So if there is nothing inappropriate in this coordinated effort between the so-called Public Integrity Section and the IRS, why is it shrouded in so much secrecy?
Yes, exactly.
Now, what happened last summer, Judicial Watch, they issued this statement. The DOJ has been corrupt. Justice Department officials might themselves be implicated in coordinating a campaign to potentially jail Tea Party organizers.
Yes, exactly. And that's where it's ultimately going to go. It's all about persecuting your enemies. As I said before, if you've got a law that is sufficiently complex, it's the same as having no law at all. And so it's been decades that we've had governments using the IRS to punish their political opponents. Congressman Hansen's example is one of the best examples we could have. That's why this is such an important story for people to see, and we can see the repercussions of it in the current day as we see Dinesh D'Souza being attacked criminally for things that other people are doing and at the most getting a civil fine for. We see them doing the same thing to the Tea Party organizations, building up to not just harass them, but to criminally prosecute them. That's why we need to have reform. Thank you so much for talking to us today, Mark. And we'll be looking forward to your further investigative journalism about the IRS and about Congressman Hansen.
Thank you for the time that you put me on the air.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Good day.
Well, and I should put in as a footnote that even though he was convicted the fourth time and he, I believe, did not have the will or the energy to exonerate himself, many people who have looked at that case, who have reviewed it, say they believe that was a false conviction as well. Well, that's it for tonight's Nightly News. Join us weeknights, 7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern.
City of Austin tap water versus filtered City of Austin tap water.
I can taste dirt in it.
God knows what's in this.
This has an aftertaste.
Tastes like Austin water? Yeah, it does. Ugh.
These people just sampled City of Austin tap water straight from the faucet. Next, we had them try a sample of tap water filtered through the ProPure G2.0 filtration system.
High quality H2O.
That one is better.
Tastes like nothing.
Yep, I know what good water tastes like. It's good water.
Most tap water contains added substances like fluoride, chlorine, Monsanto's deadly pesticide, glyphosate, and many others. Studies prove that these substances are linked to an assortment of major health issues, including tooth decay, lowered IQ, and even cancer.
It tastes like you're drinking out of the lake when you're drinking tap water.
It has that processed flavor to it.
The ProPure G2.0 filtration system removes these deadly substances and many more, leaving only fresh-tasting, deliciously clean water.
Okay, this is very tasty.
It's good water.
Refreshing.
It's good.
Go to InfoWarsStore.com today. Use promo code WATER and save 10% off your ProPure purchase. Again, that's InfoWarsStore.com or call 1-888-253-3139.
You are watching the InfoWars Nightly News, which airs 7 p.m. Central at InfoWarsNews.com. Members can share their passcodes with up to 11 other people, and your support is helping us defend liberty worldwide.